I am sending some postcards to my friends who live in other states. I want to tell them about my vacation to the Grand Canyon. I had such a great time. I had exciting hiking adventures and the views were amazing. But I'm having a little bit of trouble finding the perfect words to tell about what I did and saw. Maybe I should think back to what I know about adjectives and adverbs to help me describe all the fun I had. What is an adjective? What are the different types of adjectives? I guess the best way to start my postcards is by describing the Grand Canyon. Since the canyon is a thing, it is a noun. The words that I will use to describe the canyon will be adjectives. Adjectives are words that describe or give us details about a noun. This means that adjectives modify or describe people, places, and things. There are many different kinds of adjectives. Let's look at a few that you probably use every day. The first type of adjective is a descriptive adjective. It gives more information about the person, place, or thing it modifies. Descriptive adjectives answer the question, what kind is it? Descriptive adjectives give information about something or someone that we can discover with our five senses. They tell us how the person or thing looks, feels, smells, sounds, or tastes. Let's look at this sentence. The happy child laughed. Can you spot the descriptive adjective? The word happy is the adjective because it is the word that describes the noun child. Descriptive adjectives are sometimes called adjectives of quality. Descriptive adjectives are exactly what I will need to describe the Grand Canyon. I might use adjectives like majestic or massive. Another type of adjective describes the amount of something that can't be counted. They answer the question, how much? These adjectives are known as adjectives of quantity. Adjectives of quantity give us a general idea of how much or how many. They answer questions like, is there a lot? Is there a little? Is there enough? Let's look at the sentence, some runners finished the race. Can you spot the adjective? That's right. The adjective some is an adjective of quantity. For my postcard, I might write something like, some trails were very challenging. Adjectives can also answer the question, exactly how many? They tell us what number of a certain noun there is. Let's look at this sentence. There are 5 tigers in the zoo. The adjective 5 tells us exactly how many tigers there are in the zoo. These adjectives are called number adjectives. In my postcard, I might mention that I took 100 photos on this vacation. Adjectives sure do make our speaking and writing more interesting. Let's review what we just learned about adjectives. Let's look at this sentence. Victoria wore a pretty dress. Which word in that sentence is a descriptive adjective? Did you answer pretty? That's correct. Pretty describes dress. Here's another sentence. Tom ate some cake for dinner. What is the adjective of quantity in that sentence? If you said some, then you know that some is the adjective that tells us how much cake Tom ate. Let's try one more. Here's the sentence. Jamal ate 2 cookies. Can you spot the number adjective in that sentence? That's right. The number 2 tells us how many cookies were eaten. What are comparative adjectives? How are comparative adjectives formed? We have just learned about adjectives that give us more information about nouns. Now we are going to turn our attention to some special adjectives. These are adjectives that are used to compare things. These are called comparative and superlative adjectives. A comparative adjective highlights the difference between two nouns. Here's a sentence that uses a comparative adjective. Ashley is taller than Sarah. In this sentence, the word taller is the comparative adjective. Let's try another sentence. A shark has sharper teeth than a rabbit. Can you spot the comparative adjective? That's right. It's the word sharper. A trick for spotting comparative adjectives is looking for the word than in sentences. When a comparative adjective is used, it is usually used before the word than in the sentence. When we are writing, there are rules to help us write and use comparative adjectives correctly. The first rule is easy to remember. If your adjective has only one syllable, just add ER to the end of the word. Let's look at the adjective neat. To make the comparative form, we just add ER to the word neat to make neater. Let's use it in the sentence. Your handwriting is probably neater than mine. With some words, you will have to change the spelling of the adjective in order to make its comparative form. For words that have the consonant-vowel-consonant pattern, or CVC words, you will need to double the second consonant before you add the ER ending. The adjective hot is a great example for this rule. To make the comparative form, we will need to double the T before we add the ER ending. The comparative form of hot is hotter. How would we make the comparative form of the adjective big? It follows the consonant-vowel-consonant word pattern, so we know we have to double the G before we add ER. Now we have the word bigger. Let's take a close look at some tricky adjectives. Those are the adjectives that end in the letter Y. One example is the word happy. In order to make its comparative form, we need to change the Y to an I before adding the ER. When we do this, we end up with the word happier. Let's try to make the comparative form of the adjective silly. What should we do first? That's right. We change the Y to an I and then add the ER ending. We end up with the word sillier. Some adjectives are even trickier because they don't follow the ER format at all. For words that have two or more syllables, the ER ending is not added. Instead, the word more is used before the word. The word beautiful is an example of this type of adjective because it has 3 syllables. Here's a sentence that uses its comparative form. Tom's painting was more beautiful than John's. How would we make the comparative form of the word interesting? That's right. We would say and write more interesting. Here's a sentence to help us remember. The book was more interesting than the movie. Believe it or not, some adjectives don't follow any pattern when making their comparative form. These are known as irregular adjectives. The word good is an example. Good becomes better in its comparative form. Here's an example. I like chocolate ice cream better than strawberry ice cream. We are learning so much about how to form comparative adjectives. Ready for a challenge? Let's review what we just learned. Question 1. How would we make the comparative form of the adjective loud? Well, we know that the word loud has only 1 syllable, so we would add the ending ER to it to make the word louder. Question 2. How would we make the comparative form of the adjective sad. If you said, we would say or write sadder, you know that the adjective sad is a CVC word. So we need to double the consonant D before we add the ER ending. So the comparative form of sad is sadder. Let's try a tricky one. Question 3. How do we make the comparative form of the adjective jolly? If you said that we would say jollier, you are correct. Remember, we have to change the Y to an I before we add the ER. What are superlative adjectives? How do we form superlative adjectives? Now we know how to make adjectives that compare two nouns. What do we do if we want to compare 3 or more nouns? That's where superlative adjectives come in. Specifically, superlative adjectives are used to identify or distinguish the highest degree of a noun. Just remember that the word super is in the word superlative. It shows the most. Let's look at an example to show you what I mean. Let's start with the adjective tall. Sam wants to know how tall he is. He is 5 feet tall. We could say, Sam is tall. Now, we want to compare Sam to Jordan, who is 5.5 feet tall. We would say, Jordan is taller than Sam. But what if Mac, who is 6 feet tall, came by and wanted to see how his height compares to Sam and Jordan? We would say that Mac is the tallest. Tallest is a superlative adjective because it compares the heights of Sam, Jordan, and Mac. In most cases, the rules for making the superlative form of adjectives follow the rules for making comparative adjectives. But instead of adding ER, you will add an EST ending. So, let's go ahead and make the superlative form of some of the adjectives we used as examples earlier. Neat was our example of an adjective that has only one syllable. To make the comparable form, we added ER to get neater. Now, to make the superlative form, we add EST to get neatest. Big was our consonant-vowel-consonant adjective. To make its comparative form, we doubled the ending consonant, G, and added ER to make bigger. In order to make its superlative form, we double the G and add EST to get biggest. What about our adjectives that end in Y? Remember that in order to make the comparative form, we change the Y to an I before adding ER. We did this when we changed happy to happier. To make the superlative form, we follow this pattern and change the Y to I, but then we add the EST ending to make happiest. We also had some adjectives that were trickier to make into the comparative form. Well, it isn't surprising that they are trickier to make into their superlative form too. Let's think back to our 3-syllable word, beautiful. To make the comparative form, we put the word more in front of it. Here's an example. Kate's painting is more beautiful than mine. How would we make the superlative form of the adjective of beautiful? Let's say John wants to compare his painting to Kate's and mine. Kate's is still the best, so we would say Kate's painting is the most beautiful. That's right. To make the superlative of words with 2 or more syllables, you add the word most before the word. What about our irregular words? Remember that our adjective good became the word better in its comparative form? The chocolate ice cream was better than the strawberry ice cream? The superlative form of good is the word best. Good, better, best. Another irregular adjective is bad. Its comparative form is worse. Its superlative form is the word worst. Today's weather is bad. Yesterday's weather was worse than today's. Now for the superlative form. Oh no, the worst weather is yet to come. Now we know about superlative adjectives. Let's review. Question 1. How many nouns are compared by a superlative adjective? A. 1. B. 2. C. 3 or more. D. None of the above. If you answered C, you know that superlative adjectives compare 3 or more nouns. Question 2. How would we make the superlative form of the adjective great? That's right. We would say greatest. Ready for a challenge? How would we make the superlative form of the adjective lonely? If you said we would say loneliest, you would be correct. We would have to change the Y to an I before we add EST. What is an adverb? Now we know that adjectives help us to know more about the nouns in our sentences, and they make our writing more specific and exciting. What helps us to know more about the verbs in our sentences? First, we must remember that a verb is doing work. It shows the action in our sentence. Let's look at this sentence. The girl runs. The word runs is our verb because it shows us what action is taking place. Adverbs are words that are used to tell us more about verbs. But their jobs don't stop there. Adverbs can also tell us more about adjectives and other adverbs. Let's start with the basics by adding another word to our last example sentence. The girl runs quickly. The word quickly is an adverb. In this case, the adverb quickly tells us how the action is taking place. Here's another sentence that has an example. Ted walked carefully. Carefully is the adverb that tells us how Ted walked. Some adverbs tell us about when the action takes place or how frequently it takes place. Here's a sentence with an example. I went hiking yesterday. Yesterday tells us when the action of hiking took place. Need another example? Let's look at the sentence. Tim went to bed early. Can you pick out our adverb? That's right. The adverb early tells us when the action took place. Some adverbs tell us where the action took place. Try to find the adverb in this sentence. Soccer practice was held inside. Where was soccer practice held? Yes, inside is our adverb in this sentence. We are learning so much about the words that make up our sentences. Let's review. Question 1. What do we call a word that shows the action of a sentence? A. Noun. B. Pronoun. C. Verb. D. Adjectives. If you answered C, you know that a verb shows action. Question 2. What do we call words that tell us more about verbs? A. Adverbs. B. Adjectives. C. Pronouns. D. Nouns. The correct answer is A. Adverbs tell us more about verbs. Question 3. What is the adverb in this sentence? Ava waited patiently. If you said that patiently is the adverb that tells us more about how Ava waited, you are correct. How do we form comparative and superlative adverbs? Many times, adverbs are easy to identify because they are the words that end in ly. Words like quickly, had happily, nicely are examples. But don't be fooled. Not every word that ends in ly is an adverb. For example, the word ugly ends in ly, but it is an adjective. And the words reply and supply both end in ly, but guess what? They can be either nouns or verbs depending on how they are used in a sentence. Just like adjectives, adverbs can have comparative and superlative forms too. These are used to compare two or more actions. For short adverbs like hard, fast, and late, you add the ER ending to make the comparative form and the EST ending to make the superlative form. For example, the red car goes fast. The blue car goes faster. The yellow car goes fastest. Adverbs that end in ly need a little extra boost to get into their comparative and superlative forms. For adverbs that end in ly, simply add the word more before the original adverb to make the comparative form, and the word most to the original adverb to make the superlative form. Here are some examples. The blue car moved more quickly than the red car. To make the comparative form of quickly, we had to add the word more before the adverb. Here is an example of the superlative form. The yellow car moved most quickly of all. The yellow car wins the race. We know this because we see the word most in front of our adverb quickly. And just like with comparative and superlative adjectives, some adverbs refuse to follow any rules. These are words like well and badly. Let's look at the adverb badly. The comparative form of the adverb is worse, and the superlative form is worst. Here's how it would look. Sue did badly on the spelling test. Joanne did worse than Sue. Bob did the worst in the class. Poor Bob. The word well also takes an irregular form in its comparative and superlative form. Let's look. Megan played the piano well. Joe played better than Megan. Sam played best of all. Go Sam! Thinking about adjectives and adverbs is helping me with my postcards. One superlative that I will use is that this was the best trip so far. I will also tell friends that I hiked more slowly than usual so that I could enjoy the most spectacular and sweeping views that I have ever seen. Now we know a lot about adverbs. Are you ready to review? Question 1. Many times adverbs end in what two letters? A. ed, B. ing, C. ly, D. None of the above. If you answered C, you know that many adverbs end in ly. Question 2. How do we form the comparative form of the adverb carefully? That's right. We would say more carefully. Question 3. How do we form the superlative form of the adverb carefully? You are correct if you said most carefully. Thinking question. In what ways do using comparative and superlative adjectives and adverbs make writing more interesting?